Do the Minnesota Vikings have a better defense in 2025? Brian Flores' unit showed us a lot on Monday night, so let's talk about it. Minnesota Vikings beat Chicago Bears 27-24 on Monday Night Football. And J.J. McCarthy is going to get all the accolades and all the praise because he's the quarterback and he made the plays at the end of the game to bring the Vikings to victory. Now, he deserves a lot of credit for that, but he also needs to take a lot of the blame for the struggles in the first, second, and third quarters. And that's where some of the complications begin. And he was named NFC Offensive Player of the Week, which rules, but it's a complicated one. But one thing that wasn't complicated in understanding, even though it kind of is because it's Brian Flores' defense, they were tremendous. Now, you may not necessarily know it by the box score, 24 points. Only 17 of them came against his defense, and 10 of them were scored in considered non-garbage time because the last touchdown was scored when they were down 2 scores, under 4 minutes to go, and they were able to drive down the field and get that touchdown. It is what it is. But there were so many elements that show you that this defense can be elite once again. So let's talk about a couple of them. The pass rush. They got 20 pressures on the day. 13 of them came from newcomers. Jonathan Allen with 7 and Javon Hargrave with 6. They were moving the pocket. They were finding ways to get into the backfield, and they were attacking. And I think that's a really important factor here because early on, they were rushing 4 and dropping 7. They were not doing a lot of those exotic blitzes and trying to create pressure that we saw earlier in Brian Flores' tenure. They were trying to win with 4, and they were getting pressure on Caleb Williams. The problem was Williams was next level when it came to evading pressure and maneuvering in the pocket. I think that's a really important aspect here. You will be able to get more sacks than just 2 because of who you're playing at quarterback. Michael Penix Jr. probably takes 5 sacks. Joe Burrow probably takes 4 sacks. Anybody who's just a pocket passer is taking more sacks because they don't have the escapability that Williams does. What he did was special, and I think that needs to be recognized and remembered. Now, what they did do later on is they modified how their pass rushes looked in the second half to try and both corral Caleb Williams to stay in the pocket so they could get him and just to collapse it overall. Instead of rushing 4, they would rush 5. But instead of sending a linebacker, what they would often do is have 3 defensive tackles and 2 edge rushers, but they'd have one of the edge rushers line up like in the slot. So when they're collapsing the pocket, they're not completely bending the arc. They have much more of a flat, straight line right to the quarterback. And by doing that, it was forcing Williams to be able to stay in the pocket, and he didn't have nearly the escapability that he would have had if that player was lined up over the tackle or over the tight end because they're trying to bend the corner. It's a lot of a flatter path, which means that when Caleb Williams tries to bounce it outside, the defensive lineman, or edge rusher in this case, can just kind of flip the hips and go at him. And you saw how impactful that pass rush style was. And being able to do those things with the secondary that's already a little weaker. Blake Cashman at middle linebacker is going to be out at least a couple weeks with a hamstring. Jeff Okudah suffered a concussion on the last play of the game. He's in the protocol right now, and he probably won't play on Sunday night. Those things all matter, and they add up. So when you are the Minnesota Vikings, getting pressure and corralling the quarterback is a difficult task, but they were up for it. And those elements are going to be huge. Now, there is one area of concern. The back end had guys open, and Caleb Williams, for some reason, was turning them down. Is Joe Burrow going to turn those guys down? And we're talking guys when they were in the pocket. We're not even talking the escapability factor here. It'll be interesting to see how things grow and develop throughout the year. But with Williams turning stuff down, it was harder to assess how good the defense actually was on the back end. But it wasn't a failure. And I think we can leave it at that, and we'll update more as we get more information. But it's clear to see that these defensive tackle additions have made a massive, massive impact and will continue to do so. I'm Tyler Forness with ATOZ Sports. Skol Vikings.